program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April the 16th. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And our weather. Mostly cloudy and breezy. Showers and a heavier thunderstorm this afternoon. Storms can bring flooding, downpours, hail, damaging wind gusts, and an isolated tornado. Well, there's a fine mix and a high of 68. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, a high of 64 and 55. Over the weekend, it looks like Saturday, a high of 77 with a shower or thunderstorm and a low of 40. And Sunday, breezy and much colder, a high of 45 and a low of 29. The highs and lows. The high was in Stafford, Virginia, 92, and the low in Big Piney, Wyoming, 19. Sunrise today at 6:42 and sunset at 7:59. And now we will go to our front page news. Ryan delivers his budget plan to a city hamstrung by debt. And this is by Justin Sondel, who is a news staff reporter. Standing in the Broadway Barns, the historic former armory and athletic facility where the City Department of Public Works stores heavy equipment, Mayor Sean Ryan peered up at gaping holes in the roof, netting strung underneath the rotting wood to protect workers from falling pieces of the structure, with chunks of debris caught 20 feet above a floor still wet from the overnight rains. As metaphors go, this one was not exactly subtle. Ryan said he chose the facility as the setting to present his first proposed budget because it symbolizes the chronic fiscal mismanagement and disinvestment from city leadership over the last 20 years, causing his administration to propose a 25% tax hike in his first year in office, necessary to bring the city books into balance and address the many capital needs throughout Buffalo's inventory of buildings and equipment. This building didn't look like this when the city got it, Ryan said. The city make it look like this through disinvestment. Like the buildings, his administration will also need to invest in its workforce, which is underpaid, understaffed, and under-resourced, Ryan said. Each and every department is short-handed. They're hamstrung in delivering for the people of the city of Buffalo because they don't have enough resources. And so, as Ryan said last month, the tax levy in his $681 million spending plan will need to rise by 25%. It would mean a 22.9% jump for homestead or residential property owners and a 16% increase for non-homestead or commercial properties. For property owners whose homes were assessed at $75,000, their tax would go up $9.31 a month. A house valued at $208,000, the city assessment average would see a bump of $25.83 a month. On the higher end, owners of a house valued at $347,000 would pay an additional $43.09 a month. Even after the increase, Ryan pointed out, city taxpayers will pay a fraction of what property owners in other nearby towns and villages pay. In addition to the capital needs in the city, Ryan said the tax increases will help repair the significant structural deficit that has piled up since the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority went into an advisory role in 2012. Over the course of former Mayor Byron Brown's 19 budget cycles, taxes rarely increased, while costs consistently went up. In addition, Brown consistently overprojected revenues and underestimated costs, resulting in end-of-year budget deficits, often to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. One often cited example of this budgeting practice came in the form of overtime accounts, particularly in public safety departments and the Department of Public Works. The city spent more than $15 million on police overtime in the 2024-25 fiscal year. But last year, former Mayor Chris Scanlon and city lawmakers passed a budget that set police overtime at $10.5 million. With more than 2 months left in the fiscal year, the city has already spent more than $12 million. Ryan's proposed budget calls for $16.5 million on that line. The Brown administration had depleted city reserve funds, spending down more than $100 million over that period to plug budget holes, and had to borrow $25 million in 2020 to balance the books. The Brown administration was saved from having to implement severe tax increases by the 2021 Federal American Rescue Plan Act, which brought $331 million into the city coffers. Brown and Scanlon, who became acting mayor when Brown resigned in October 2024, spent more than half that money and money made off interest from the funds sitting in bank accounts, a total of more than $224 million to plug budget holes. In addition, this year's budget passed while Scanlon was in the mayor's office will again end in a deficit. The current fiscal year budget was set at $622 million, but the city will actually spend more than $668 million by the time it ends in June, according to Ryan administration projections. With no tax increase or revenue generation because of non-recurring revenues and the discontinuation of what Ryan has described as magic budgeting, the city would be facing a projected shortfall of $109 million, according to his administration's calculations. In addition to the additional $45 million, the tax levy increase would bring in the Ryan administration will use increased state aid, money from the planned foreclosure auction, which has not happened in 7 years, and more aggressive collection efforts on the more than $100 million in outstanding fines and fees owed to the city to close the gap. With the proposed budget now turned over to the Common Council, the administration will engage in negotiations with city lawmakers who will have an opportunity to offer amendments before the final version of the spending plan is set on June 8th. Ryan said his administration has been in talks with council members in recent weeks, all of whom acknowledge that significant tax increases are necessary, but balked at the 25% increase when it first became public. Nobody wants to be in this position, Ryan said, but we have a $109 million worth of bills to pay, and we're going to work constructively with the council. We're open to ideas. Fillmore Council member Mitchell Nowakowski, who chairs the Finance Committee, said council members are in discussions about how best to work with the administration to get the books in balance without overburdening constituents. They may seek to spread the tax increases out over more years. We have to deliberate that if this 25% either goes through now or it's spread out and in more pain later, because the mayor has demonstrated the need for cash on hand and to meet obligations. And the most important thing in this budget to me right now is we're dealing with real numbers, Nowakowski stated.
And our next article is from the Associated Press. Pakistan official works toward new U.S.-Iran talks. Pakistan's army chief arrived Wednesday for talks in Tehran in the latest diplomatic move to ease tensions in the Middle East and arrange a second round of negotiations between the United States and Iran after almost 7 weeks of war. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned that the U.S. will ramp up its infliction of economic pain on Iran. Bessent said the effort would be the financial equivalent of a bombing campaign. The Pakistani military said the delegation also included the country's interior minister and other senior security officials. The group is part of the ongoing mediation efforts, the military said, but it gave no details. Pakistan has emerged as a key mediator in the conflict after it hosted rare direct talks between the U.S. and Iran in Islamabad, a move authorities said helped narrow differences between the two sides. In other developments, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif arrived in Saudi Arabia on an official visit to discuss regional issues. A statement from Sharif's office said he was received at the airport in Jeddah by senior Saudi officials. Sharif was accompanied by Pakistan's foreign minister and information minister. The U.S. blockade on Iranian ports and renewed Iranian threats strained the week-old ceasefire agreement, but regional officials said they were making progress, saying the United States and Iran had an in-principle agreement to extend it to allow for more diplomacy. They spoke on condition of anonymity. But even as mediators worked for peace, tensions simmered. The commander of Iran's Joint Military Command, Ali Abdali, threatened to halt trade in the region if the U.S. does not lift its naval blockade. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Bagheri announced the incoming Pakistani delegation, said Islamabad, has held discussions with the Americans and has also heard our stances. During this visit, the views of both sides are to be discussed in detail. A senior U.S. official said the United States has not formally agreed to extend the ceasefire and that engagement with Iran continues. The official also spoke on condition of anonymity. Before the 2-week ceasefire expires on April 22nd, mediators are pushing for a compromise on 3 main sticking points that derailed direct talks last weekend: Iran's nuclear program, the Strait of Hormuz, and compensation for wartime damages, according to a regional official who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss the mediation efforts. Bagheri said Iran is open to discussing the type and level of its uranium enrichment, but his country, based on its needs, must be able to continue enrichment, Iran's state media reported. The negotiating team, led by Vice President Vance during these last weekend's talks in Islamabad, urged the Iranians to agree to a 20-year moratorium on uranium enrichment as part of a potential deal to end the war, according to a regional official involved in the mediation efforts, and a person briefed on the matter. The Iranians rejected the U.S. plan and countered with an offer to suspend enrichment for 5 years, the regional official and the person briefed on the matter added. They spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to comment publicly on the negotiations. The White House rejected the Iranians' proposal. The U.S. and Iranian proposals were first reported by the New York Times. The fighting has killed at least 3,000 people in Iran, more than 2,100 in Lebanon, 23 in Israel, and more than a dozen in the Gulf Arab states. 13 U.S. service personnel have been also killed. The war, now in its 7th week, has jolted markets and rattled the global economy as shipping has been cut off and airstrikes have torn through military and civilian infrastructure across the region. Oil prices fell on hopes for an end to the fighting on Wednesday, and U.S. stocks surged close to records set in January. Yet the future of the fragile ceasefire still hung in the balance as the U.S. pressed ahead with its blockade, which threatens to sever Iran from economic lifelines it has relied on since the war began nearly 7 weeks ago, and Tehran threatened regional trade. I think they want to make a deal very badly, President Trump said in an excerpt from an interview with Fox Business Network, Mornings with Maria, that aired Wednesday. He added, I view it as very close to over, Trump claimed Wednesday, that China had agreed not to provide weapons to Iran as reports circulated that Beijing has considered transferring arms.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and we will go to our editorial. A targeted deterrent. Tobacco use has declined to historic lows in New York. American Lung Association data shows that just 9.3% of adults smoke and 15% use tobacco overall. New York State data shows smoking rates among high school students are even lower at 2.4%, and vaping rates, though still a concern, also declined to 13.1% as of 2024. There is one trend that's inching upward, however. Nicotine pouch use among New York's high schooler students has doubled from 1.5% to 3% since 2022. A survey from Monitoring the Future, which studies the behaviors of young people, is even more troubling, reporting that use of the pouches by 10th graders increased 1.9% in 2023 to 3.4% in 24, and use by seniors from 2.9% in 23 to 5.9% in 24. These are not big numbers, but they're going in the wrong direction. Governor Kathy Hochul and State Assembly and State Senate may not agree on other elements of their respective budget proposals, but they are firmly and rightly aligned on placing a 75% tax on alternative nicotine products such as nicotine pouches. It's the same 75% excise tax that has applied to all other tobacco products for more than a decade and would generate about $54 million for state health care programs. This unanimity from state lawmakers recognizes the tobacco industry's continuing efforts to market its highly addictive products to young people. Flavored vapes are banned in the state, but nicotine pouches that come in flavors like wintergreen, cool mint, and chill are available in most convenience stores for only $5 to $6 per can. That's an accessible price, even for high school students. No wonder that, as reported by the News' Robert Gavin, a recent Siena poll shows voters supporting the tax on nicotine pouches 64% to 25%, with 68% to 24% saying they were concerned about the increasing use by young people of products such as Zyn. Hochul is well known for her opposition to raising taxes, but she understandably makes an exception for tobacco products. A large body of evidence demonstrates that increasing the price of products containing nicotine reduces consumption. Nicotine's addictive properties, comparable to opioids, are well known, and young people whose brains are still developing have a higher risk of becoming addicted to the nicotine in tobacco products than adults. Other than being addictive, nicotine carries its own health risks, such as increased risk of cardiovascular disease, gum disease, and other oral health conditions, as well as the possibility of nicotine poisoning. Nicotine pouches are small and meant to be placed between lip and gum. Over time, the nicotine enters the bloodstream through the oral mucosa. The pouches are not approved as smoking cessation products. Far from it. According to Reuters, the FDA has recently held up its approval process for certain nicotine pouches, including some Philip Morris, maker of Zyn, products. Apparently, though it had previously approved a long list of these, scientists at the agency are hesitant to authorize the current products due to potential risks to children and users. While the pouches are certainly less harmful than cigarettes or even vapes, the data on teen use is concerning. Speaking of vapes, there could also be a new 55-cent per unit tax on vape products. There is plenty of pushback from opponents of this proposal, including claims that making pouches more expensive puts a safer alternative to smoking out of reach for adults who want to quit. A smoking cessation program would be an even safer alternative. Some retired law enforcement officers have voiced concerns over the illicit market, already a problem with flavored vapes, and business groups agree, saying that the proposal would do more harm than good, hurting small business but enriching the black market. Enforcement of the flavored vape ban, as well as increased vigilance against all illicit sales of tobacco products, must be a priority. These are crucial support systems without which bans and taxes make little headway. It should come as no surprise that the tax is supported by the American Academy of Pediatricians, American Cancer Society, American Lung Association. We join them in their support.
And our Another Voice article is on healthcare. It's written by Dr. Lisa Grabert, who is a visiting research professor at Marquette University. Federal 340B program is misused in New York. Each year, over 100 hospitals throughout New York reap billions of dollars in prescription drug discounts through a federal program known as 340B. Those discounts are supposed to benefit low-income and underserved patients. But much of that money never reaches them. Instead, hospitals direct a significant share into financial markets. Now, lawmakers in Albany are considering legislation that would reinforce and expand 340B. They must pause that effort and instead hold hospitals accountable for serving the people the program was created to help. Hospitals participating in 340B in New York State take in far more money than those that do not. They report average annual revenues of about $932 million, more than double the $423 million reported by non-participants. That financial edge is driven in part by how the program works. Hospitals purchase drugs at steep discounts, then charge insurers and sometimes patients higher prices. The difference becomes profit. Increasingly, that money is being invested. The typical 304B hospital in New York invests roughly $191 million in stocks and bonds, compared with about $95.4 million among those outside the program. If those additional resources were being used to strengthen care, that would be one thing, but the data suggests otherwise. New York's 340B hospitals invest little in their workforce, relying more heavily on contract labor while paying those workers more than full-time staff. This lack of investment in the workforce may be related to the recent historic 41-day nursing strike at New York Presbyterian Hospital. Meanwhile, executive compensation has soared. NYU Langone Health pays its CEO more than $15 million a year, 163 times what the average nurse earns. A program meant to help struggling patients is instead generating revenue that's routed into investment portfolios. The legislation under consideration in Albany would move in the wrong direction by reinforcing the status quo. Lawmakers should instead ensure 340B funds are used to lower costs and expand access to care. Until then, 340B will remain not a lifeline for low-income patients, but a reliable source of revenue for large hospital systems.
And our editorial cartoon is from Steve Kelly of Creator Syndicate. It is one frame. It's two members of Congress walking away from the Capitol. a man and a woman, and the man to the woman says, he needed to go, but remember, it's true. Dirtbags like Eric Swalwell, who make our influence peddling, mortgage fraud, and insider trading seem petty by comparison. Why, isn't that the truth?
That is the truth, yes. Our first opinion piece is written by Hope Reese from the Chicago Tribune. Historic vote ends Orban's control of Hungary. On Sunday night, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban conceded defeat in one of the most important elections I've ever witnessed. The right-wing strongman stepped down from power in Hungary after a rule of 16 years that spanned the adult lifetime of a generation of young people who have now made their voice heard through their vote. In these 16 years, Hungary's new democracy has been on the line, taking hit after hit, as the government has taken over control of the media, rigged the electoral system, threatened immigrants, and stripped away human rights. I am a newcomer to Hungary. I arrived in 2018, fell in love with the country despite its politics, and was captivated by this place. I am incredibly grateful to now be a permanent resident, to have found and developed a community of friends, local and expatriate, and made a life here. But I have never been as grateful as I am now. Sunday night's victory for the Tisza party, the first to successfully rally support against the giant of Fidesz, Orban's party, was historic. Nearly 80% of the Hungarian population got out and voted. I do not write about Hungarian politics, but I can tell you what I've witnessed here. Many Hungarians have felt defeated. People who are members of the LGBTQ community may be afraid to go out in public. Though last year's Pride's parade in Budapest drew more than 100,000 marchers from across the European Union. An anti-pedophilia act conflates gay people with pedophiles and prohibits gay characters from appearing in children's books or school curriculum. Teachers are paid little and adhere to strict rules. When I gave a talk at a high school in Pest about my book, The Women Are Not Fine, I was told, do not mention LGBTQ. I could talk about war, rape, domestic violence, and infanticide, just not a man loving a man. There are many more points that I could discuss about falling short in assisting Ukraine, a cozy relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin, immigration, and the economy. But I am sharing what I have seen firsthand. Many Hungarians have felt defeated, until, that is, Sunday night. The capital city of Budapest was electric. From the moment I stepped into the crowded metro with a group of friends, everyone high-fiving each other on the escalator, to us weaving our way into the watch party directly across the river from the parliament, majestic and aglow. When the votes came in, I could hardly believe it. The crowd did not erupt at a single moment. Rather, it took time to sink in. Even waking up the next morning and sending messages to friends, they were telling me it didn't feel real. I have to admit, I was cynical on Sunday, expecting something to go wrong, expecting the win to be questioned, expecting fairness not to prevail. But I was wrong, and boy, I'm so happy about that. There is a long road ahead. How do you transition to equity and fairness? How do you undo the corruption that has seeped into the foundation of a place? I don't have answers, but I can't wait to see what comes next. This victory has made me optimistic far beyond the borders of my chosen home. It makes me feel that there may be hope for my home country, too.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour, and we will continue with our opinion pieces next, coming from Robin Abkarian of the Los Angeles Times. Recent visit to Europe reveals anti-American sentiment is growing. It was midday just before Easter in Paris. My niece and I walked past the city's famous opera house, where tourists were relaxing on the wide steps. French soldiers armed with assault rifles strolled around, a comforting sight given the warnings about Iran-backed sleeper cells and potential retaliatory attacks. A busker with a guitar and a microphone entertained the crowd with a Coldplay cover. Between songs, he asked, "Anyone here speak English?" Unbelievably, not a single hand went up. The busker shrugged, turned both thumbs down in the universal gesture of disapproval, and said, "America, eh." I felt him. A couple of days after I got home, I saw a social media post that reminded me of that moment. Honestly, wrote, "At that ambitious girl, I don't know how anyone could even feel comfortable traveling as an American outside of the U.S. right now. Anti-American sentiment is on the rise, and it sucks being from a country whose presidents do things like threaten to end the whole civilization, invade Middle Eastern countries based on lies about weapons of mass destruction, or insert themselves into pointless conflicts in faraway lands." In college, I had friends who sewed Canadian flags onto their backpacks because they didn't want to be associated with America's misadventures in Southeast Asia. Polls show that half of Europeans view President Trump, who has threatened to withdraw from NATO, as an enemy rather than an ally. He has managed the neat trick of telling our allies that they are useless while castigating them for not rushing to help with his poorly planned war on Iran. "This is not our war," the German defense minister said pointedly last month. "We have not started it." Quite simply, with the assent of the Republican Party, Trump is taking a wrecking ball to the world order as we've known it in our lifetimes, while also managing to make life harder for Americans at home. "We're worse off in every way and officially a global pariah," said the New York Times columnist Jamelle Bouie on Facebook. Awesome, love that. Anyway, I was glad to see that someone I know, the novelist Aaron Zirkin, responded thoughtfully at that ambitious girl's Instagram post. "Been an American abroad for 20 years now," wrote Zirkin, whose Russian-born American husband is an executive with Renault. "6 countries so far. I try to represent the heart of the U.S., which I believe is about being open to all people and finding commonalities rather than differences. This truly is the heart of the matter. In the fall of 1967, my family moved from Northridge to France, where my father had a year-long Fulbright teaching scholarship at the University of Paul. My mother sat her rambunctious kids down. It's very important that you not be ugly Americans, she told us. We were too young to have read the classic 1958 novel she was referring to, but we understood that we were to be curious and respectful. One winter evening in Paul, my parents took us to an anti-war demonstration. The locals we marched with were chanting something we couldn't quite make out. It sounded to our American ears like "Yankee, go home." We figured it out pretty quickly, and frankly, it was unsettling. Zirkin had a similar experience in Moscow in the early 1990s at a kiosk near Red Square. An older Russian lady looked at me and in a thick Russian accent said, "Yankee, go home." Zirkin told me by phone from Ljubljana, Slovenia, where she and her family had moved in September from Seoul. It opened up this whole feeling inside me of that there is something about my country that may not be as wonderful as it seems. It was a huge perspective-breaking moment for me. Years later, Zirkin was living in Paris. Trump had just been elected to his first term. I could not get into a taxi without someone asking me why I would let this happen, as if it was all me, Zirkin said. They'd say, "I can't believe you Americans are so stupid." I was like, "Look, I didn't vote for him." By the time Joe Biden was elected in 2020, Zirkin said her family had moved to Ireland, where the vibe was much more, thank God you guys got your act together. Maybe in the not so distant future, we will again, and then we can start to put this long national nightmare behind us.
And our last opinion piece is written by Nicholas Rohatyn. He's from Bloomberg Opinion. Fix for gambling, emissions, AI's ills is in U.S. capitalism. The Supreme Court is preparing to consider whether states and municipalities can pursue billions of dollars in damages from fossil fuel companies over greenhouse gas emissions. Dozens of local governments argue that these firms misled the public about climate risks and should now pay for rising sea levels, wildfires, and extreme weather. Climate is not the only arena where courts are being asked to resolve the social costs of private enterprise. A growing number of lawsuits target major online sportsbook operators, alleging that their platforms foster addiction and financial harm while failing to implement adequate safeguards. Whatever one thinks of these cases, their very existence reflects a deeper tension in American capitalism. While industries generate large, measurable profits alongside large, measurable public costs, the system struggles to resolve the imbalance. If legislatures do not act in advance, courts are asked to act after the fact. American capitalism excels at dynamism. It produces growth, innovation, and wealth on a scale no other system has matched. But markets reward gains. They rarely price consequences. When the costs of growth are widely distributed and the benefits are concentrated, political and legal backlash follows. For much of the last century, we relied on regulation to manage this tension. Over time, trust in government's capacity and impartiality eroded. Many Americans now view the state as either ineffective or captured by the industries it is supposed to regulate. Simply adding new layers of bureaucracy will not restore confidence, nor will sweeping attacks on enterprise. We need a mechanism that preserves dynamism while addressing its side effects before they metastasize into lawsuits and political rupture. Call it a public interest adjustment. The principle is straightforward. When an industry generates large, quantifiable social costs, a small and predictable share of its profits would be directed toward mitigating those costs, not into general revenues, but into industry-specific statutory trusts with clear mandates, independent governance, and mandatory sunset review. Each trust would rest on 3 guardrails. First, scale. Only firms of national consequence would be under scrutiny, protecting small businesses and early-stage innovation. Second, targeting. Funds would flow exclusively to programs linked to a specific harm in question. Third, accountability. Every dollar would be audited and publicly disclosed with formal review every 5 to 7 years. This approach is not novel in spirit. Superfund excise taxes have financed hazardous waste cleanup. The Community Reinvestment Act links bank growth to community lending. The tobacco settlement required structured payments in exchange for partial legal peace. The public interest adjustment would update that logic for a faster-moving economy. Consider energy and heavy industry. Using the federal government's social cost of carbon as a benchmark, even a modest charge equal to a fraction of that figure could raise tens of billions of dollars annually for climate resilience and community transition efforts. Funds could support methane abatement, infrastructure to ameliorate floods and rising temperatures, and assistance for regions dependent on fossil fuels, without waiting decades for litigation to wind through the courts. Artificial intelligence presents a different challenge. Estimates suggest AI could displace millions of workers globally, with the U.S. absorbing a substantial share of that disruption. The firms driving that transformation are among the most profitable in history. A modest levy on the largest developers and deployers directed into a workforce transition trust could finance retraining, wage insurance, and community college partnerships of meaningful size. Contribution rates could be tied to measurable job displacement benchmarks, declining if disruption slows. Then there is online gambling. Americans wagered more than $150 billion on sports betting last year, while national treatment financing remains a fraction of that scale. A 1% assessment on large operators could generate $1 to $2 billion annually for addiction treatment, prevention, and data transparency initiatives that link harm measurement directly to remediation. Critics will say this is simply a tax by another name. In a formal sense, any mandatory payment resembles one. The distinction lies in design and purpose. A public interest adjustment would be sector-specific, linked to harm caused, transparent, and have a sunset provision mandating a review of its effects. It would not be fund-unrelated spending. It would represent a compact. Companies that benefit from operating at massive scale in a stable legal and economic system accept a limited, predictable obligation to help manage the public consequences of that scale. Others will argue that such measures would undermine competitiveness. Modest, clearly defined adjustments tied to domestic profits are unlikely to alter investment decisions in industries whose primary markets are here. By reducing litigation risk and political backlash, they may enhance long-term stability. When legislatures fail to create forward-looking mechanisms to align profit with responsibility, the burden shifts to judges and juries. That is an inefficient way to govern a modern economy. For consumers, firms, and the communities struggling with the consequences of today's most profitable industries.
M&T CFO says the economy is holding steady despite the war. The situation in Iran poses new risks to the U.S. and global economies through energy prices and uncertainty, said Daryl Bible, M&T's chief financial officer. M&T is keeping tabs on customers who might be impacted over the military conflict with Iran, such as companies connected to petroleum or farmers who rely on fertilizer. Right now, we haven't seen any negative results from the conflict with our customers. It's probably early on, and hopefully this thing gets done sooner so it doesn't actually get prolonged from that perspective. We're cautiously watching everything. But I think it could have a broader impact on the consumer discretionary spending. Just because if confidence continues to fade down, that could definitely pull that back. And that would have an impact on the gross domestic product growth for sure. The higher-end consumer continues to be strong and is spending, while the lower-end consumer has not declined but maintained and is vulnerable to the risks in the environment. Bible's other insights on the economy and the bank's performance: the labor market. People are still hiring. People who want jobs can still get jobs for the most part. The economy is growing jobs and it's positive. If that actually turns negative, that would have a huge impact on the economy. Allowance for loan losses. M&T kept the allowance for loan losses flat from the previous quarter, even though its criticized loans continue to drop. Our balance sheet is really strong and very, very healthy. In a normal environment, our provision should have come down significantly from what we had, but we chose to keep it where it is. Acquisitions, they're taking a prudent approach to possible deal making. M&T completed its most recent acquisition to purchase of People's United Financial 4 years ago. The first quarter earnings for M&T recorded a net income of $664 million, down from $759 million in the fourth quarter and up from $584 million a year ago.
Savings versus surges. Analysis shows some grocery prices jumped while others tumbled. This is an article from the USA Today. Grocery prices are on the rise, but not all foods see increases, according to a new price analysis of some common food staples. Coupon Follow analyzed the monthly Consumer Price Index average food price data by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics for the past 2 years to look at what's happening to your food market basket. Overall, while 11 of the 25 common grocery staples fell in price in the last 2 years, the food items that climbed offset those savings, the analysis showed. USA Today got an exclusive first look at the data. What's more expensive? Proteins and beverages saw the biggest increases, according to the analysis. Here are the 5 products that saw the largest increase from February 24 to February 26. Coffee. The price per pound for ground roast coffee increased 55.2%. Lettuce. The price per pound for romaine lettuce went up 38%. Ground beef. 100% ground beef per pound rose 31%. Steak. USDA choice boneless sirloin per pound rose 21%. Orange juice. A 16-ounce can of frozen concentrate rose 15%. There was a high degree of variation in price fluctuation across categories, said David Ortega, food economist and professor at Michigan State University. Wait a minute. Let's go to I'm going to say what got cheaper. Here are 5 products that saw the biggest decrease in price from the same time period. Eggs. A dozen grade A large eggs saw the largest decline of any item, down 16% in 2 years, but still costs 73% more than its February 2020 price. Potatoes. A pound of white potatoes is 10% cheaper. Tomatoes. The price per pound of field-grown tomatoes is down 10%. Bread. The price per pound of white bread is down 7%. Pasta. The price per pound of spaghetti and macaroni is down 7%. There was a high degree in variation in price fluctuations across categories. Several shocks affected the agriculture and food industry, he said, including bird flu that devastated the egg markets and climate change-driven droughts that hammered coffee and fresh produce production, and tariffs layered additional costs on import-heavy categories. These shocks hit products in different ways, which is why you get such a mixed picture when you look item by item, Ortega told US Today. But the net result is that families are still paying more at the cash register. Coffee and beef prices likely will stay elevated. Average coffee prices rose 55% in 2 years, driven by consecutive poor harvests in Brazil and Vietnam, plus U.S. tariffs on major producing countries. While Brazil's 2026 harvest is expected to be stronger, it takes months for lower commodity prices to reach store shelves. Average ground beef prices are up 31%, and that traces back to the entire U.S. cattle herd sitting at a 75-year low and strong consumer demand. Beef prices are likely to stay elevated through 2027 and 2028. Consumers can mitigate some of the price increases by the meal choices they make, said Clay Carey, senior trends analyst at Coupon Follow. For instance, the price of a taco might for a family of 4 increased 18% from $20 in February 25 to $24.50 in February 26. Swapping in a cheaper protein or doing at least 1 or 2 meatless meals per week will make a noticeable difference. An egg and toast breakfast went down 9% from $5.50 in 24 to $5 in 26. However, that same breakfast cost $7.50 in February 25, the peak of the avian flu crisis, before the price of eggs dropped dramatically. A meal of homemade biscuits is the most affordable and stable meal tracked in the study, with ingredients that cost $2.13, down 7% in 2024. Besides deciding which food you want to purchase, stacking savings methods also will be helpful. using coupons, purchasing your grocery items with store brands if they are similar, and buying in bulk, as the staples, at reduced price levels when available, as well as comparing the unit price for each item, will assist you in creating a series of small actions that contribute to long-term financial advantages.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Albert Margaret Nee Emmons. Bondrow David Allen. Howard Carol Nee Klein. Lohman Janet Nee Booth. Maytika Sylvia Michelle. Miller Beth Ann, nicknamed Annie. Miller Richard, nicknamed Dick. Montgomery Bernadette. Ostrander Julia Nee McIver. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
And now we'll go to our royal stars, our horoscopes. Happy birthday for Thursday, April 16th. You are caring, intellectual, and dedicated. Family and community matter to you. This year is your turn to socialize and enjoy life because your creativity and zest are at a pinnacle. The stars show the kind of day: 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And doing a perusal of all of the zodiac signs these days, today will be either dynamic or positive. Aries, dynamic. This is a powerful day for you. Mercury in your sign is lined up with Neptune, while your ruler, fiery Mars, gets a boost from Pluto. Tonight, you're strong. Taurus, positive. A powerful behind-the-scenes energy is at work today, which you might or might not be able to harness. Tonight, quiet time. Gemini, positive. Your popularity is strong. Today you can work with others, either in a partnership or in conjunction with a group or an organization, to make changes for the better. Tonight, be friendly. Cancer, positive. Today, 2 things can happen. Either you take charge and set your armies marching to achieve your objectives, which might be to fight opposition to what you want to do. Tonight, you're admired. Leo, dynamic day. Your wanderlust is powerful. Today, your imagination and desire for something exciting, something bigger, something grander is off the charts. Tonight, new ideas, new places. Virgo, positive day. Grab every chance you have to use the wealth and resources of others, including the government or your partner, to improve something that's important to you. Tonight, check your finances. Libra, positive day. Romance is passionate today. Meanwhile, relations with spouses, partners, and members of the general public are powerful. Tonight, be friendly. Scorpio, positive day. Your imagination and drive combine today, giving you power to achieve what you want at your job or with your health. Tonight, work to get organized. Sagittarius, dynamic day. This is an amazing day for those in sports, the entertainment world, or the hospitality industry. You have energy to burn. Tonight, have fun. Capricorn, positive day. Recently, increased activity and chaos at home have made demands on your time and energy. Tonight, relax. Aquarius, dynamic day. If you're in sales, marketing, teaching, acting, or writing, you're unstoppable today because your powers of persuasion are remarkable. Tonight, discussions. And Pisces, a positive day. Financial discussions will go well today because you are imaginative and persuasive. Tonight, check your money. I like all those. I don't know
Though,
which day
yeah,
I
it
would
looks like everybody's going to have a good day today. That's good.
Yes, yes.
And today in history, in 1972, Apollo 16 blasted off for the moon with astronauts John Young, Charles Duke, and Ken Mattingly on board. And from the digest, and this is in the e-edition, North Korea progress on nuclear weapons. North Korea made very serious advances in its ability to turn out nuclear weapon with the probable addition of a new uranium enrichment facility as it stepped up activity at a key complex. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi said Wednesday. Enriching uranium can provide an alternative, and experts say a more effective path to acquiring weapons-grade material in addition to reprocessing spent plutonium extracted from a nuclear reactor. Speaking in Seoul, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed a rapid rise in activity at the 5-megawatt reactor, the reprocessing unit, a light water reactor, and other facilities at the North Yongbyon nuclear complex. The U.S. Treasury's Bank Regulation Agency terminated the lease for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Washington headquarters after 14 years and agreed to pass the premises to the federal government's General Real Estate Management Agency, according to records obtained by Reuters. The International Monetary Fund expects at least a dozen countries to seek new loan programs to cope with surging energy prices and supply chain disruptions caused by the Middle East war, with several sub-Saharan African nations seeking help. Ukraine Russia-linked hackers broke into more than 170 email accounts belonging to prosecutors and investigators across Ukraine in the past several months, according to data reviewed by Reuters this week. That campaign shows that how Moscow spies are keeping tabs on Ukrainian officials tasked with rooting out corruption. The United States will not renew the waivers that allow purchases of some Iranian and Russian oil without facing U.S. sanctions. And the United Nations envoy Mike Waltz appeared to torpedo the candidacy of former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet to be the next leader of the world body Wednesday by saying he shared concerns expressed by Republican Senator Pete Ricketts of Nebraska about her fitness for the job. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April 16th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak, and we'll go to our City and Region section. Save the Michaels founders suing nonprofit for $675,000. This is written by John Harris, who's a news staff reporter. The founders of Save the Michaels of the World, Inc. are suing the organization for more than $600,000 in what is the latest trouble for the embattled addiction services provider that lost its state funding and is winding down its operations. Avi and Julie Israel are seeking $375,000 for reported breach of employment contract and more than $300,000 they claim they are owed by Save the Michaels, according to a lawsuit filed Tuesday in State Supreme Court in Erie County. Lisa Coppola, managing partner of the Coppola firm, which is counsel to Save the Michaels, said the organization has no comment on the lawsuit other than we will fight it and will respond in the appropriate manner. At this time, Save the Michaels is focused on supporting individuals in need, while the organization works to keep the Newfane House of Hope in operation, Coppola said by an email. Part of the lawsuit's claims focus on the leadership transition at the start of 2026 at Save the Michaels, which was founded in June 2011 to bring attention and awareness to the effects of opioids after the death by suicide of Michael David Israel, 20, the son of Avi and Julie Israel. The Israels were longtime members of Save the Michaels board, and Avi Israel led the organization from its founding until January 1st. That is when Jessica Goff, who joined Save the Michaels in 2019 as an administrative assistant and advanced into leadership roles, was elevated into the role of CEO. Avi Israel, on December 26th, posted on Facebook that he would retire January 1st. In the post, he lamented inaction from state government in the addiction space and claimed that the state had taken money away from the organization. According to the lawsuit, Avi Israel and Save the Michaels agreed that upon Israel's resignation as president, he would be hired as founder and special consultant for a 3-year period starting January 1st. But on March 16th, without just cause or provocation, Avi Israel was removed from his board position by Goff, who also refused to execute the aforesaid employment contract with Israel, the lawsuit claims. With the breach of that employment agreement, Save the Michael owes Avi Israel $375,000, according to the lawsuit. In a Facebook post on March 22nd, Avi Israel said he learned from social media that he was off the board. Unfortunately, the new leadership decided I was in the way, and together with the board pushed me out, even though I had a 3-year agreed-upon work contract to mentor the incoming leadership, he wrote on Facebook. This is a sad situation on how all this unfolded. Just weeks before his ouster from the board, Investigative Post reported that Save the Michaels would lose its Erie County funding after a state audit finalized in 2024, when Avi Israel was still leading the organization, found fiscal mismanagement at the nonprofit. Among the audit's findings, advances totaling nearly $40,000 were made from the organization to Avi Israel in 2021 and 2022 without prior board approval. Prior approval requirements were not being followed for out-of-state travel, and the board approved a $25,000 raise for Avi Israel in January 24 without state Office of Addiction Services and Support's regional office support or approval as required for the OASAS-founded providers. On March 2nd, OASAS told the Buffalo News that it had previously identified serious fiscal and operational challenges at Save the Michaels, and it was discontinuing 2 multi-year contracts worth more than $5 million on March 29th. But in the more than 14 years they were involved at Save the Michaels, the Israels said in the lawsuit that they loaned various sums of monies to the nonprofit and have been guarantors on many Save the Michaels credit cards and debts in excess of $300,000, according to the lawsuit. So the lawsuit claims Save the Michaels owes the Israels more than $300,000 for loans made to the organization and obligations guaranteed by Avi Israel on behalf of Save the Michaels. Save the Michaels, the lawsuit claims, has failed to pay the credit card bills, which can damage Avi Israel since he is the guarantor, the person who assumes legal responsibility for another entity's financial obligations if the original organization defaults. Further, the lawsuit claims that the Israel's attorney has contacted Save the Michaels to retain an independent auditor to review the organization's books and records to determine how much is owed to the Israels. In addition, the Israels claim that Save the Michaels is in possession of properties that are owned by the Israels and that were loaned to Save the Michaels. The lawsuit claims that Goff has refused to allow the Israels to pick up their property and has attempted to convert the properties into Save the Michaels' name. Since it lost its funding, Save the Michaels has been winding down its operations. Its location in Lockport has been closed for more than a month, and Save the Michaels is seeking to transfer ownership of its Newfane House of Hope program to the Recovery Center of Niagara, according to an application received by the state this month. The House of Hope program, which is a 12-bed male residential reintegration program, is already located in the Recovery Center of Niagara building, and services will remain unchanged according to the application. In addition to the 2 canceled contracts with OASAS that were scheduled to run through the end of 2028 and 29, Save the Michaels has a multi-year $750,000 contract for a new syringe exchange program, of which $183,000 has been spent, with the state health department that runs through June 30th, 2028, according to Open Book New York. But Save the Michaels Lockport location, which is now closed, was the site that offered syringe exchange services. The department will not accept vouchers for reimbursement from Save the Michaels for services provided after the date of their closure, Health Department spokesman Cadence Aquavia previously said.
Market Arcade to reopen with classics and today's hits. This is by Jonathan Epstein, who is a Buffalo News reporter. Nearly 4 months after AMC Entertainment pulled out, the 8 screens of downtown Buffalo's only movie theater will light up again next Wednesday with a handful of classics to be followed by a host of new releases. Scene 1 Market Arcade will open at 1 p.m. April 22nd with a selection of movies priced at $5 for the day, with all proceeds to benefit the Elmwood Village Association and Hearts for the Homeless Food Pantry. The cinema at 639 Main Street, now operated by Schenectady-based Scene 1 Entertainment, will be showing 2 movies that were filmed in or take place in Buffalo. The Natural, whose world premiere in 1984 was at nearby Shays Performing Arts Center, and Bruce Almighty. Both will be available all day with 3 showings. The theater, in partnership with the screening room, which just closed its Amherst location, will also showcase a Halfway to Halloween series with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, The Birds, as well as an array of classics like Wizard of Oz, Singing in the Rain, Rebel Without a Cause, and Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. It will then begin permanent operations the next day, just in time for a blend of new Hollywood movies, classics, independent films, and special programming. Crews are still installing some equipment and furnishings and putting the finishing touches on the revived theater, which will get new exterior signs within days. Everything is new or completely rehabbed. Additionally, Scene 1 and Benchmark invested in a new theater management system, which Masher described as the brain that runs the projection booth, because AMC removed its own, and they tuned or replaced the sound system, speakers, subwoofers, lamps, and other equipment. We wanted to do optimum sound, Masher said. We wanted to make sure we had the most visually and audio pleasing performance that we could. They're even looking ahead to other gimmicky things like motion-enabled theater seats that are synchronized with the movie action, 4DX seating that combines the motion with environmental effects like wind, water, scent, and fog, or ScreenX panoramic cinema technology that adds two diagonal screens along the walls for an immersive 270-degree viewing. The reopening marks a major coup for Benchmark, which spent $5.5 million in a total on the 39-year-old theater since it bought in 2016. AMC came in that year with millions of dollars in renovations that brought reclining seats, upgraded menu items, new sound and projection technology, as well as swiveling tables and a bar with alcoholic drinks. And all 8 screens were updated to a digital format to support first-run movies. But the COVID-19 panic sapped its business along with the growth of streaming services, and sales and foot traffic didn't recover enough. So AMC backed out last year despite frantic efforts by Benchmark to save the relationship. It's since invested an additional $200,000 with Scene One, and both Scene One and Benchmark are working on additional plans to collaborate with area restaurants, other businesses, and the theater district to maximize opportunities to build excitement, including through a 75 dinner and movie deal with Tapo Restaurant and possibly other downtown eateries. Airline employees staying at the nearby Holiday Inn will also get discounts. Following the grand opening next week, Scene One will begin its regular movie lineup with first-run films like the new Michael Jackson biopic, Michael, Over Your Dead Body, a rom-com about the couple that goes on vacation together without realizing each is out to kill the other. Super Mario Galaxy, Fuse, Lorne, a documentary about Lorne Michaels, and I Swear, a foreign film filled with obscene language about a man suffering from Tourette's syndrome. Then the hits really start coming. The Devil Wears Prada, May 1st, followed by Masters of the Universe, Toy Story, etc. There are a lot of originals too, but the summer movie season has really heated up. Masher noted that Universal Studios announced in March that it will give theaters at least 5 weekends of exclusive access to its movies this year and 7 weekends in 2027 before they're released to streaming services or other outlets. That's already the case with Disney, while they hope other studios will follow suit, giving patrons an incentive to go out. Tickets will be priced a little lower than at Regal Cinema because many patrons downtown will also have to pay for parking. For matinees until 4 p.m., adults are $11 each, while children, seniors, and students or members of the military with identification are $10. Evening movies are $14 and $12 respectively, but on Tuesdays, movies are $8 all day for everyone. Tickets can be purchased online at 2 kiosks inside or at the concession stand. As for parking, Benchmark and Scene One are negotiating with M&T Bancorp to make use of the bank's employee and visitor lots on Main Street behind the theater for a discounted rate. The larger employee lot will be available after 3 p.m., while the 110-space visitor lot will be open after 5 p.m., and both can be used until 3 a.m. The two are also trying to work with the city and Buffalo Civic Auto Ramps for movie patrons to get a discount at the nearby Augsburger ramp, which is usually $6 for evenings and weekends, and they're talking with the Catholic Diocese about accessing the parking lot of St. Michael's Church on Washington Street, which is closing. Well, back to theaters in Buffalo.
Yes, that's a good idea. Okay, give me a minute here. I have to get myself set up here. Okay. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour, and we will now go to our sports section. Our first article is This is the Time. This is by news staff reporter Rachel Lindsay. Jarmo Kekalayan, oh geez, I am so sorry, became the Buffalo Sabres' newest general manager in mid-December, and one of his first moves was to issue a mandate to his new team and to set a few expectations. The Sabres were 3 games into a 10-game winning streak, but the furniture still needed rearranging on December 15th when the Sabres announced his promotion from senior advisor to general manager. Jarmo emphasized, I'm going to go by his first name. Apologies to Jarmo if he's listening to this. Jarmo emphasized the values of character, of a strong work ethic and persistence, the sheer will of not giving up, of treating teammates, coaches, and people in the organization with respect. The bottom line, be a good teammate. He also gave the Sabres an admonition. No one is safe. You will play for your job every day. You just can't be floating around, going by the motions, and assuming just because things haven't gone our way in the past that we can just kind of fall back. Sabres right wing Josh Doan said, "You've got to eliminate excuses, and we've done a good job of that." Those tenets have helped the Sabres become one of the NHL's top teams over the course of the last 49 games. Under Jarmo's watch, the Sabres have earned their first berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs since 2011. They host the Boston Bruins in Games 1 and 2 at KeyBank Center in the first-round series. The playoffs begin Saturday, and dates and times for the first 2 games between the Bruins and Sabres are expected to be announced late Wednesday or Thursday. The Sabres have moved from 24th in the NHL on December 18th to 4th, and Atlantic Division champion, as they enter their final regular season game Wednesday against Dallas. "We've never really thought that we couldn't come back," he said Wednesday morning at KeyBank Center. "It shows the confidence of this team that we believe in what the coaching staff is telling them to do and asking from them." The Sabres clinched their first playoff spot since 2011 on April 4th by virtue of the New York Rangers beating the Detroit Red Wings at Madison Square Garden. Did Jarmo's initial message to the team he oversees make an impact? I hope that it did some, but I think the answer is always in the room. We've talked about it all along, but we have so much skill on this team. Now that we're competing hard and working hard and getting contributions, I think it drags everyone into the battle. Jarmo has a new message for the Sabres as they prepare for the playoff. Now is the time. "This is the most important part of the season," he said. "Everyone knows that. Coaches, players know that. Management knows that. And we'll be watching very carefully on how we do in the playoffs." The Sabres had injury report. The Sabres had 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 2 goalies on the ice for the morning skate at KeyBank Center. But Coach Lindy Ruff said that several players were not going to play Wednesday against Dallas as a means to avoid the risk of injuries ahead of the playoffs. Ruff did not specify which players would not face the Stars. Ruff also gave updates on goalie Alex Lyon, lower body injury, and Noah Ostrand, upper body. Lyon, Ruff said, feels a lot better, and Ostrand is really close, but Ruff put him in the doubtful category.
And Bills need help in the middle of defense. May select OSU star. None of the general managers, coaches, or scouts needed to ask Ohio State nose tackle Caden McDonald if he's tough. There's enough evidence each time you watch one of his games, especially McDonald's 14 starts during the 2025 season. Guards became turnstiles while the mammoth of a man burst through the line of scrimmage. He slammed running backs to the ground. To him, double teams merely delayed the inevitable. There were times he could not be blocked. "I believe I'm the best defensive tackle in this draft class," McDonald told reporters, at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. I really pride myself on being consistent and competitive, holding my teammates accountable, and I put it all together. McDonald likely will be among the players considered by the Bills if he is available when they are on the clock with the 26th pick of the first round. At 6'2", 326 pounds, he is by far the best defensive tackle in the class. In 2025, he totaled 65 tackles, including 9 for a loss, despite playing a rotational role. The Bills have depth at the position, but do they have someone who can play nose tackle in their new 3-4 base defense? Deion Walker doesn't have prototypical size for the position. Ed Oliver will be a defensive end in the odd front. Bills coach Joe Brady and his defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard are committed to stopping the run. There is arguably nothing better at it in the draft than McDonald, who, according to Pro Football Focus, led FBS defensive linemen last season in run stops and stop rate. The question, however, is whether Buffalo will align in base defense often enough to use a first-round pick on a nose tackle. Tampa Bay Buccaneers nose tackle Vita Vea, one of the NFL's best, has not played over 73% of his team's snaps in any season of his 8-year career. The New York Giants' Dexter Lawrence, who reportedly requested a trade amid a contract negotiation, leads all nose tackles in quarterback pressure since 2022. He has 76 more than anybody else during that span. Elite defenses are formidable up the middle. Dominant nose tackles can make everyone's else's job easier, but each team must balance positional needs with value, especially during early rounds of the draft. There are also some questions about the impact McDonald can make early in his NFL career. He did not start a game until 2025, and he needs work as a pass rusher. It is also unclear whether he can be an every down player on the next level because he never had to do it at Ohio State. The Buckeyes got his best in his biggest moments, though. Twice during the Big Ten championship game, McDonald sacked Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner and presumed number 1 pick at the Las Vegas Raiders. In the final 2 games of Ohio State's season, the Big Ten championship and a college football playoff matchup against Miami, McDonald totaled 8 run stops. It is not just the production that intrigues teams. He plays with violence, a trait coaches covet from trench players. I'm the type of guy, I welcome double teams, he said. I command double teams, and I'm going to free up the linebackers. Whatever team decides to get me, that's what you're going to get. If Bills have a 4-down front, imagine Leonhard getting to use McDonald with Walker, Oliver, and Greg Rousseau or Bradley Chubb. Or the team can get creative with Walker's usage. The depth chart got hit hard by injuries in 2025, with Forest former coach Sean McDermott to play Walker at 66.4% of the defensive snaps in 2 playoff games. Though McDonald is the top nose tackle available, he's not the only one who may interest the Bills. Texas Tech's Lee Hunter should be available early in the second round if Buffalo chooses to trade out number 26 to accumulate more draft capital. Across the past 3 seasons, 2 at Central Florida, Hunter totaled 31.5 tackles for a loss with 7 sacks. He may not be much of a pass rusher in the NFL, but he may be able to make the same impact as McDonald. Iowa State's Dominique Orange reportedly benches 450 pounds, and the strength translates to the field. He and Georgia's Kristen Miller are expected to be drafted in the same range as Hunter. Later in the draft, the Bills could target Oklahoma's Grayson Halton, who played for their new cornerbacks coach, Jay Valai. Halton has more juice as a pass rusher. His 30 pressures in 2025 ranked second on the Sooners, and he showed marked improvement as a run defender. NC State's Brandon Cleveland and Navy's Landon Robinson are among the day 3 options who fit the Bills' defense, but perhaps the most intriguing late-round defensive tackle played at a small school. Southeastern Louisiana's Caleb Proctor totaled 13 tackles for a loss, including 9 sacks as a senior at the FCS program. His background as a high school linebacker helped him pursue the ball carrier, but he is a raw prospect who will need time and patience to develop into a technician. Ruth?
Hawks forge a new identity in the wake of Young's exit. This is on the NBA. Trae Young rose from the bench, took the hands of his teammates, and bid farewell to the 15,900 fans at State Farm Arena midway through the fourth quarter of the Hawks' January 7th win over the Pelicans. After weeks of anticipation, Atlanta had finalized a deal that sent the 4-time NBA All-Star to the Wizards for J.C. McCollum and Corey Kispert. Young, the centerpiece of the franchise built around for the past 7 seasons, had become synonymous with the Hawks, and his departure was only the first domino to fall. But when the dust settled after all transactions, what remained was something different. A group of 7 players who had started the season together, and 8 eager new additions who learned to lean on one another, carrying Atlanta out of play in purgatory and into the outright playoff berth for the first time since the 2021 season. A selfless, unified group is what Coach Quinn Snyder knew was the only path forward for a team that had lost its identity amid a revolving door of player acquisitions and exits. Snyder was off with his estimation. 25 different starting lineups have taken the court this season for the Hawks, but heading into the first-round series against the Knicks, the April version is the most cohesive to date. A 13-2 run in March, which brought the Hawks from the familiar cusp of play in tournament into the mix for the number 5 or number 6 seeds, proved to be true. 4 of the Hawks' starting 5 embarked on the season together. Center Oyeka Okonu, first-time All-Star Jalen Johnson, reigning Most Improved Player Dyson Daniels, and new addition Nickeil Alexander-Walker. All of them are having career years. McCollum, acquired in the Young trade, replaced former number 1 draft pick Zachary Reisaker in the lineup and brought the veteran presence the team needed. Jonathan Kumanga, when healthy, has established himself as the 6th man. That connection will be tested against the Knicks team that enters the playoff series with a clear advantage in continuity, built around a core that has played together for years, and in some cases dating back to college. Atlanta is banking on momentum to challenge New York's long-standing chemistry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is approximately 28 minutes past the hour. And we will go to what Asking Eric has to say. Rough blood draw at appointment scares regular patient. Dear Eric, I have blood drawn weekly. The last time the needle prick stung a good bit, unlike all the others, and the next day my arm was black and blue. Next time when I go in and my number is drawn, if I see that nurse, would it be acceptable to decline and say, I'll wait for the next nurse? Bad blood draw. Dear Draw, it's acceptable. It's your body, and you should feel comfortable with how it's treated. You might get better results, however, by calling ahead or raising your concern about the last draw you had before taking a number. It's possible that it was a one-time fluke, or that the nursing staff can make adjustments to ensure it doesn't happen again. Dear Eric, I'm passionate about my political beliefs and display posters and other things showing it. Most people in my area believe the opposite. I'm wary of offending anyone who comes into my home in advance. I'd like to avoid it if I can. Is this what I should be doing? I know how touchy a subject that is these days. Agree to disagree. Dear Agree, at the risk of making the question too simple, are your signs saying offensive or abusive things? You write that your passion for your beliefs is what motivates you to display the signs in the first place. So I can't help but wonder if you think that the signs might offend a passerby as well as a visitor to your home. If the answer is yes, you might ask yourself what the distinction is between a passerby and a visitor in your mind, and what you're trying to accomplish with your signage. Ultimately, your passions are part of who you are. You demonstrate that by hanging the signs in the window. If you stand behind what you believe and think about having a public conversation about it is important, then visitors have the choice to either engage or stay away. Dear Eric, in a recent column, Concerned Daughter wrote that her 87-year-old mother has pancreatic cancer and has been experiencing severe brain fog, fatigue, and memory issues, yet she still drives. A similar situation arose with my mother. I told her doctor that she was still driving. He ordered a driving assessment through a rehabilitation center. She did poorly on the driving test, so they notified her insurance company and they canceled her insurance. I spirited away her keys. I believe that my mother's anger and/or depression at losing her independence was insignificant as compared to another human being to be injured or killed. I believe it was my moral and ethical responsibility to do so. I could never have forgiven myself for not trying if I hadn't done all I could to prevent such an occurrence, and the worst happened. My ethical responsibility. Dear Responsibility, thank you for your response and this suggestion. Many state DMVs make it possible for people to anonymously report drivers who are impaired or may be a danger to themselves and others. That's another option for the letter writer. In my original response, I neglected to fully address the danger that the mother is likely posing by insisting on driving. While other aspects of the letter suggest that creating a boundary in the relationship will help everyone involved, it's imperative that the letter writer or someone close to her intervenes with her mother's driving right away. Dear Eric, I love your column. I read with interest the column regarding the person in the exercise class that counted loudly and was distracting to the writer. It was the count's enemy. As a fitness instructor for more than 22 years, I always encourage my students to count aloud as it helps with breathing during the class. You'd be surprised at how many students hold their breath while exercising. That being said, I can understand if the class was a more low-key class and one person was being distracting to the others. That should be brought to the attention of the instructor. The instructor should be willing to make the class enjoyable for all the participants. Signed, Counting on It. Dear Counting, as someone who used to frequently forget to breathe in workout classes, I appreciate your technique. And you make a good point. The counting may be beneficial to the counter or to the run of the class. The letter writer's best course of action is to talk to the instructor about the class environment. The writer may find that the instructor is also aware of the counting and doesn't see it as an impediment to the productive group workout.
And for our first life feature, Town on a Roller Coaster over Fantasy Island's fate. The operators of the former Fantasy Island amusement park strike an optimistic tone on their website. The 2026 season is shaping up to be our best yet, they wrote in a pitch to season pass buyers. However, the park's website no longer allows customers to purchase those season passes or daily tickets, and the link for job seekers also is inactive. And the park, now with the supersized name Niagara Amusement Park and Splash World at Fantasy Island, hasn't said anything on its Facebook page since January. For these and other reasons, worries are spreading on Grand Island that the park won't reopen for its 2026 season. They've been a really good partner. I mean, they really have. And I ask them, I take them at their word when they say they're going to open next month, said Eric Finkelhorn, a longtime leader with the Grand Island Chamber of Commerce. As a guy who runs a number of businesses, every day that goes by, I get a little more worried. Executives with IB Parks and Entertainment, the park's owner, did not respond to messages seeking comment, but town officials say they have every expectation the park will open this year. I hope the rumor is not true. It's an important piece of our town, said town board member Jose Garcia. Fantasy Island, which opened 65 years ago, might be best remembered for its advertising campaign featuring park-going saying, "Fun, wow!" It features family-oriented entertainment from the Silver Comet roller coaster to the long-running Western Town Shootout. And many times did I participate in that. Fantasy Island closed in 2020 before the current ownership group 1 year later bought and revived the park, which is a major economic asset for the island. I do hope they reopen, and I hope if they do not reopen, that someone else reopens. It's kind of important part, I'll call it, our ecosystem for tourism and for economic development, said Grand Island Supervisor Peter Martson Jr. Fantasy Island has drawn in generations of Western New Yorkers since opening in 1961. Its rides are among the most visible structures on Grand Island, seen by thousands of motorists daily as they pass the park on the Niagara Thruway. But in 1982, Fantasy Island had fallen into bankruptcy, leading to first of several ownership changes through the 1980s and 90s. Martin DiPietro bought the park in 1994, changing the name to Martin's Fantasy Island. In 2016, after more than 2 decades of park stewardships, DiPietro sold Fantasy Island to California-based Apex Parks Group. The park at the time had more than 30 rides and water attractions on its 75 acres. DiPietro said then that the sale to Apex was the best way to ensure Fantasy Island's future success. However, complaints about Apex management of the park soon rolled in. The company had started charging for parking, for example, and patrons said lines grew longer and rides were frequently out of order. In February 2020, Apex abruptly announced it was closing Fantasy Island and selling off the park's rides and equipment. Town officials tried to help find a buyer before the COVID-19 pandemic struck, stymieing those efforts. Finally, in June 2021, IB Parks and Entertainment from Chicago bought the park and began the extensive process to repair damage caused by vandals and prepare the venue for reopening. IB CEO Gene Staples said the only attractions remaining following the Apex fire sale were the Ferris wheel and the Silver Comet. Rebranded as Niagara Amusement Park and Splash World, the venue's water park opened in August 2021. The 2022 season brought new rides and park features online, including Western Town and Kittyland, with more added in the years that followed. Last year, the park revived its tradition of hosting Grand Island's 4th of July fireworks display. The Niagara Amusement Facebook page has 12 posts from January, including behind-the-scenes looks at how employees get rides ready, links for purchasing season passes, and an announcement that the park would reopen on May 23rd for its 65th anniversary season. Since January 21st, however, the page has just one post from February 11th, when the park wordlessly updated the cover photo on its Facebook account to an image showing the participants in the Old West shootout. The comments on that post include numerous questions about the future of Niagara Amusement. Okay, what is up with the park? I don't have passes or anything, but I don't want to see the park flop either, wrote one commenter. Has anyone been able to contact them to see if they are opening or not? Already bought my season passes, wrote another. Niagara Amusement has not responded to any questions. Staples Niagara Amusement General Manager Dana Mearshart and other IB Parks and Entertainment officials did not respond this week to requests for an update on the park's status. Finkelborn, the officer with the Grand Island Chamber, said he reached out to Mearshart after fielding calls from people wondering about the fate of the amusement park. Those calls included some from Grand Island High School, wondering why the company seemed to be moving slower this year in hiring its seasonal employees, who often include students from the high school. It was the folks who have already an unfortunate muscle memory of the previous ownership group not communicating and then basically shutting down last minute. And these are people, some of them have already bought season tickets for this coming year, Finkelhorn said. Feeblehorn said he encouraged the company to remain transparent about what it's going to do at the park. I spoke to them last week, to their general manager here in Buffalo, and she said at this time they have plans to open and they're working through some logistics, preseason logistics. That would be their official thing they asked us to share with everybody. Garcia, the town board member, said he has heard Niagara Amusement isn't hiring young workers at the usual pace, but every indication is that the park will open this season. Marston, the town supervisor, said the park means a lot to Grand Island. It provides seasonal jobs to high school and college students on the island, generates property tax revenue, and gives people a reason to visit the island and patronize other businesses while they're here. He said he hasn't talked to anyone from IB Parks nor anyone representative a prospective park buyer. I've heard nothing, said Marston.
Lawyers warn that AI chats could work against their clients. This is an article from Reuters. As people increasingly turn to artificial intelligence for advice, some U.S. lawyers are telling their clients not to treat AI chatbots like trusted confidants when their freedom or legal liability is on the line. These warnings became more urgent after a federal judge in New York ruled this year that the former CEO of a bankrupt financial services company could not shield his AI chats from prosecutors pursuing securities fraud charges against him. In the wake of the ruling, attorneys have been advising that conversations with chatbots like Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI's ChatGPT could be demanded by prosecutors in criminal cases or by litigation adversaries in civil cases. We are telling our clients you should proceed with caution here, said Alexandria Gutierrez-Fett, a lawyer at New York-based firm Cobra & Kim. People's discussions with their lawyers are almost always deemed confidential under U.S. law, but AI chatbots are not lawyers, and attorneys are instructing clients to take steps that could keep their communications with AI tools more private. In emails to clients and advisories posted on their websites, more than a dozen major law firms in the U.S. have outlined advice for people and companies to decrease the chance of AI chats winding up in court. Similar warnings are also appearing in hiring agreements by some firms with their clients. For instance, New York-based firm Shermonte stated in a recent client contract that sharing a lawyer's advice or communications with a chatbot could erase the legal protection known as attorney-client privilege that usually shields communications between lawyers and their clients. The case that helped set off the alarm bells involved Bradley Hepner, the former chair of bankrupt financial services company GWG Holdings and founder of alternative asset firm Beneficent. Hepner was charged by federal prosecutors last November with securities and wire fraud and pleaded not guilty. Hepner had used Anthropic's chatbot Claude to prepare reports about his case to share with his attorneys, who later argued that his AI exchanges should be withheld because they contained details from the lawyers related to his defense. Prosecutors argued that they had a right to demand material that Hepner created with Claude because his defense lawyers were not directly involved and because attorney-client privilege does not apply to chatbots. Voluntarily revealing information from a lawyer to any third party can jeopardize the customary legal protections of those attorney communications. Manhattan-based U.S. District Judge Jed Rakoff ruled in February that Hepner must hand over 31 documents generated by Anthropic's chatbot Claude related to the case. No attorney-client relationship exists or could exist between an AI user and a platform such as Claude, Rakoff wrote. Lawyers for Hepner did not immediately respond to requests for comment. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan declined to comment. Courts are grappling with the growing use of artificial intelligence by lawyers and people representing themselves in legal cases, which, among other things, has led to legal filings containing made-up cases invented by AI. Rakoff's decision was an important early test of the AI chatbot era for bedrock legal protections governing attorney-client communications and materials prepared for litigation. On the same day as Rakoff's ruling, U.S. Magistrate Judge Anthony Patti in Michigan said a woman representing herself in a lawsuit she brought against her former company did not have to hand over her chats with OpenAI ChatGPT about the employment claims made in the case. Patti treated the woman's AI chats as part of her own personal work product for the case, rather than as conversations with a person who her employer could seek to use for its defense. ChatGPT and other generative AI programs are tools, not persons, Patti wrote in his order. The privacy and usage terms for both OpenAI and Anthropic state that the companies can share data involving their users with third parties. Both also state that they require users to consult a qualified professional before relying on their chatbots for legal advice. Rakoff at a February hearing in Hepner's case noted that Claude expressly provided that users have no expectation of privacy in their inputs. Representatives for OpenAI and Anthropic did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Setting guardrails, the advice from lawyers has ranged from telling clients to select their AI platforms carefully to suggesting specific language to use in chatbot prompts. Los Angeles-based O'Mulveny and Myers and other firms said in client advisories that closed AI systems designed for corporate use could provide stronger protections for legal communications, though they said even that remains largely untested. Some firms said AI legal research is more likely to be protected by attorney-client privilege when it is conducted at the direction of a lawyer. If a lawyer does advise the use of AI, a person should say so in the chatbot prompt. New York headquartered law firm DeBevose and Plimpton said in a notice on its website. I am doing this research at the direction of counsel for whatever litigation, the firm suggests people write. Information about AI use is also becoming common in contracts used by law firms with clients, according to a Reuters review of contracts posted to a U.S. government website. Cher Tremonte, which often represents white-collar criminal defendants, said in a new contract in March, disclosure of privileged communications to a third-party AI platform may constitute a waiver of attorney-client privilege. Justin Ellis of New York headquartered law firm Molo Lampkin and other lawyers said they expect that more rulings will eventually clarify when AI chats can be used as evidence. Until then, attorneys are saying that an age-old assumption still applies. Do not talk to anyone except your lawyer about your case, including AI.
And we have a TV column today from Ellen Pergament. The journey of Western New York's native Lucas West on NBC's The Voice Tuesday night ended in the season finale with a third place finish. The winner declared by former Voice contestants and superfans was Alexia Javy, a 31-year-old R&B singer from Irvington, Alabama, who sang Patti LaBelle's Lady Marmalade and Adele's One and Only Tuesday night, and a duet with her coach, Adam Levine, of his Maroon classic Sunday Morning. West, a 21-year-old native of Rochester suburb of Fairport who attends SUNY Fredonia State University, also performed 2 songs Tuesday by himself and a third song with his coach, John Legend. West sang the first song, Foreign's Cold as Ice, without playing the piano for the first time in the competition. He sang his second tune, Legend's Ordinary People, while playing the piano. West and Legend played Elton John's Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me side by side while each played the piano. He moved into Tuesday Final Four on Monday night singing Paul McCartney's Maybe I'm Amazed while playing the piano during the Battle of the Champions. In earlier rounds, he performed the Billy Joel tune New York State of Mind and Elton John's Benny and the Jets. West joined previous Western New Yorkers Cammie Clune, Sidney Sterlace, Joshua Vacanti, and Elliot Hunt and Chris Lillis of Letter to Elise in passing their blind auditions over several seasons. Sterlace finished third in season 26, while Clune and Vacanti reached the semifinals of their seasons. A senior at Fredonia's College of Music, Theater, and Dance, West has a concentration in jazz studies. A few weeks ago, he said he has taken a gap semester. According to the university, he plays trombone and piano in the Fredonia Jazz Orchestra and sings in multiple ensembles in the local vocal jazz program. He studied classical piano with the Reverend Sean Duggan as a freshman and studied jazz piano with Nick Weiser as a sophomore. West studies jazz voice with Professor James Harrington. He credits them for shaping his technical skills and artistic identity, according to the Fredonia release. I always say Fredonia is conservatory training for the price of a state school. You just can't find that anywhere else, he said.
Italy's Meloni slammed by Trump over Pope, lack of support in war. And this is an Associated Press article. Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni was supposed to be Europe's bridge to President Trump. It may be burning. After chastising Pope Leo XIV, Trump turned his ire on Meloni, long one of his closest European allies, for calling his papal broadside unacceptable and not backing the U.S.-Israel war in Iran. I thought she had courage, Trump said in an interview with leading Italian daily Corriere della Sera. I was wrong. Meloni has not directly responded to Trump's attacks, but they may be to her advantage as she recovers from a decisive referendum defeat last month and as she seeks to dull the impact of the deeply unpopular Iran war, including higher energy prices. I actually think this is a godsend for her, said Nathalie Tocci, a professor at Johns Hopkins SAIS Europe and the director of the International Affairs Institute. Trump has become completely toxic across Europe, across much of the world, including Italy. Trump doubled down on Wednesday, saying their bond had frayed. She's been negative, Trump told Fox News. Anybody that turned us down to helping with this Iran situation, we do not have the same relationship. The only European Union leader invited to Trump's second inauguration, Meloni was expected to leverage her strong ties with him once he returned to office 15 months ago. The two had a perceived natural alliance with nationalistic tendencies and similarly hardline stances on immigration. But Italy was not spared the pain of Trump's tariffs, and some may argue she has gotten little out of the relationship. When asked if they had spoken this month, Trump told Carreri, "No, not in a long time." After an uncomfortable appearance in the Oval Office a year ago, when she avoided directly confronting Trump on tariffs, the distance grew over the Iran war. Meloni has stated Italy will not participate in the war, and the country last month refused U.S. bombers the authorization to land at a pivotal airbase in Sicily. Meloni's statement this week, calling Trump's attack on the Pope unacceptable, was the most direct criticism of the president yet. It's been building up over time, not so much because she is moving away from him, but because he has become increasingly unhinged, Tocci said. Cabinet Minister Adolfo Urso, a member of Meloni's far-right Brothers of Italy, said U.S.-Italy relations would not be shaken by the flap. Italy and the United States are allied countries and maintain their relationship and alliance within international institutions, starting obviously with the Atlantic Alliance, he told Radio 24, adding that the Church's moral teachings cannot crack relationships consecrated in the alliances signed a few decades ago. The president of the ISPI think tank and a former Italian ambassador to the U.S. said Trump's hot-headed reaction could not be attributed to his frustration with Europe, just not Italy. Besides not getting support for the Iran war, Trump lost a strong ally with Viktor Orban's electoral defeat in the Hungarian elections this weekend. She said Trump's personal outburst aimed at Meloni should not be construed as damaging the alliance as a whole. Europe absolutely considers the United States its historic ally, but in some ways wants to be involved in the decisions that are taken. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April 16th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Dewatniak, and thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability